Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of So You're Thinking About Therapy. I'm your host, a therapist. Today, we are going to talk about another myth about those who go to therapy. That myth being that those who go to therapy are crazy. This episode follows the last episode about the myth that those who go to therapy are weird. I would encourage you to listen to that podcast as well, since I am going to be using a lot of the same logic in this episode. One reason we in the helping profession don't like terms such as crazy or weird that was not discussed in the last episode is the fact that we in the helping profession don't like terms with negative connotations. That is why we no longer use terms such as the R word or addict. The DSM speaks on this directly when talking about the term addict. In the section talking about substance use disorders, I quote, "Some clinicians would choose to use the term addiction to describe more extreme presentations, but the word is omitted from the official DSM substance use disorder diagnosis terminology because of its uncertain definition and its potential negative connotation." Some of you will find this to be just political correctness, silly political correctness, but it is important to the values of us in the helping profession. For one thing, it's cruel. Also, a term like addict describes the person as a whole, and not just one thing they struggle with. An addict, if you're going to use that term, is nothing but an addict, and we in the helping profession do not think that a substance use disorder makes up an entire personality. It would be the same in the medical field. You wouldn't say someone is a cancer. You say that someone is diagnosed with cancer. Humans are complex beings with many elements that make up the whole personality. A person is much more than an addict or crazy or weird. They might be a parent, a son, a daughter, a partner, an employee, a hard worker. They might have a religious or spiritual identity. They might be a sibling, be a member of a hobby group, such as a reader or a gamer. They might be a friend. I can go on, but I think you get the point. I really can't overemphasize how important using non-offensive labels is for us in the helping profession. We often deal with those who hit rock bottom. The pain someone can feel, along with the loved ones, is unbelievable. If anyone has been in that position, or has seen a loved one in that position, they know what I'm talking about. Being aware of language and using softer, more scientific terms and diagnoses can truly help someone through their crisis. One of the reasons I like the mental health industry is that, for the most part, kindness does have a value, and I think using this language is a good example of that. Now, getting back to the myth that those who go to therapy are crazy, I'm going to ask you to define what crazy is. I did this with the last episode with the term weird. Again, if you're going to label yourself a negative term and really have excess guilt about it, you should at least be able to define it. Like with weird, Google again gives us synonyms for crazy, such as foolish, senseless, or strange. If you scroll down a bit, the synonyms get more specific, giving examples such as insane, unhinged, or demented. Of course, those aren't really definitions either, and now we just have to ask, what is the definition of unhinged or insane? When I think of crazy, personally, I don't think of a definition. I almost think of a vibe that comes with the term. And it's that vibe, and only that vibe, that will determine if something is crazy or not crazy. The vibe often leads to examples, such as fictional examples, like the Joker or Hannibal Lecter. For this episode, I will be using numerous fictional examples. I am hoping that by doing this, I will cause less offense. Speaking of those characters, like the Joker or Hannibal Lecter, I want to make something very clear right now. And I hope you have at least heard this before, but it is a myth that those who struggle with mental health concerns are violent. This is a fact, you cannot debate it. And if someone is at risk, it's more to themselves than others. I also think it's worth noting that the Joker and Hannibal Lecter, characters like that who we call crazy, do not think they have mental health struggles. They believe they are the sane ones. You would never find them thinking about going to treatment willingly. Going back to the definition of crazy with this in mind, it's tempting to say that crazy means violent. But again, if we take a look at it more rationally, we notice that that's not always the case. That crazy does not always mean violent. For example, if someone was running around in Walmart in their underwear shouting, "The pigs are coming, the pigs are coming," you might call that person crazy. I, despite my ethics of the term, might agree with you. But there's no violence there. It might be unsettling, but it's not violent. The other way works too. You could be violent without being crazy. Again, I'll use fictional characters here in the hopes that I cause less offense. James Bond engages with violence, but I don't think people would call him crazy. The Godfather engages with violence, and I don't think people would call him crazy. Selfish? Sure. A sociopath? Sure. Dangerous? Sure. But not crazy. Tony Soprano, John Wick, Batman, Iron Man, Sonic the Hedgehog, Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan are all characters that engage with violence, but I don't think anyone would call them crazy. You might call them bad people, especially Sonic the Hedgehog, or you might not like what they do, reject their morality. I would agree with you with a lot of them, but you would not say crazy. A note here, I want to make this clear, I am not justifying violence here. I'm not saying violence is a good thing. Again, many of the people I just mentioned, like The Godfather and even John Wick, as much as I like those movies, should be removed from society for safety reasons, and they do more harm to the world than good. As I said before, many are sociopaths, who do not care about others. I'm just explaining that crazy is a very unspecific word, and the moment we try to narrow it down a little bit by using other terms such as violence, the logic just falls apart. The fact that crazy means nothing specific and only has negative connotations is not the only reason we dismiss the label. In the mental field, we really only try to use terms that gets close to the objective thing that is being seen. Take depression. When I say depression, or major depressive disorder, if you're talking the diagnosis, you can give a pretty specific definition of what that is and the criteria that it falls under. And most people would have a pretty close overlapping definition or criteria if asked to do them. The DSM has a lot of specific features to help guide with this, and that's why really we have the DSM at all, is so we can try to get as specific as possible. There's a lot of debate about what should or should not be in the DSM. Some things I think are more clear than others. We could debate about what can be better, but that is the goal. And crazy doesn't get us anywhere near that goal. The last point I want to make in this episode is to acknowledge that the people we do think are crazy or label as crazy are not the ones who go into therapy. The Joker does not want to go to therapy. Hannibal Lecter does not want to go to therapy. One of my favorite fictional characters, at least from a therapeutics perspective, is Frank from the American television show Shameless. Sorry, I've only seen the American version. He's played brilliantly by William H. Macy. The man has an unhealthy relationship with any substances. I would argue he's a sociopath. He would stab anyone in the back for a quick buck, a quick high, or sex. He is not the type of person that would go to treatment willingly. He does not see himself as the problem. The world around him is the problem, and how dare the world not give him what he thinks he deserves. If he ever does go to treatment, it would either be forced, such as if he was a risk to himself and others, an involuntary hospitalization, which is pretty rare actually for someone who doesn't even bring themselves in, or he would be, quote, forced to go by a family member, such as a potential partner, or maybe one of his kids. And he would go, lie, and fake it, and try to get the therapist on his side to manipulate him. Or he would just try to wriggle his way out of it, go for a session or two, claim that it's not working, I tried, too bad, the end. What I'm really trying to emphasize here is if you're thinking about going to therapy, and you're worried you might be crazy like the Joker or Hannibal Lecter, that alone separates you from them quite a bit. Because again, they would not even think about going. The fact that you see yourself in pain and know that you have a problem is actually a lot of evidence that shows that you are the mature one, the sane one, the one who wants to grow and get better. There was nothing crazy about that. Thank you for listening to this episode of So You're Thinking About Therapy. I'm your host, a therapist. If you like this episode, please let me know in the comments and like and subscribe. Also, please share this episode with someone who you think it might benefit. Join us next time, where we are going to talk about the last myth of therapy for this series, that those who go to therapy are weak. Good luck on your mental health journey, and I hope to see you again soon.